Hey, Michael. Welcome to the show this week.
Hello, hello. Thank you.
How are things?
Things are amazing.
Yeah.
I've been playing with my Hermes, setting up
Ooh, we
some
need to do it.
sweet automations. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about it on the real show, not the pre-show. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Things are good. You?
Very cool. Well, you ready to kick it off?
Let's kick it.
Let's do it.
In honor of the end of the conclusion of the World Cup, let's kick it off.
It was a busy weekend. There was like Formula One, World Cup finals. There was something else going on. And I was like, dang, it's a busy sports weekend. So for those of you who watch even non-ball and ball sports, it was good.
But I know those are all good things, and I enjoyed them.
Cool. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 489, recorded July 21st, 2026. I'm Calvin Hendricks Parker.
And I'm Michael Kennedy.
Hey, Michael, welcome. Good to see you. We want to make sure you all recognize our sponsorships of the show. So thanks to Michael and the courses over at Talk Python. Go check those out. If you head over, and he's got tons of new stuff he's been adding in there, and I hear there's more on the way. And then check out the fine folks over at 6 Feet Up. So I'm co-founder and CTO of 6 Feet Up, and we do some amazing consulting to solve hard problems. We love using Python. I've been doing this for 27 years as part of that agency, and I love it. If you want to connect with Michael and I between the shows, you can find us on all the socials. We're on Mastodon, Blue Sky, X, LinkedIn, and then the show has also got links in the show notes for the shows Mastodon, Blue Sky, and X. If you want to watch live, you can always catch us generally Tuesday mornings my time, very early mornings for Michael's time, so 7 a.m. Pacific on pythonbytes.fm/live to be part of the audience. Sometimes we'll get questions in there and we'll pop them onto the show, and you can get them answered right away. Kind of real-time feedback to the episode. Older versions are also available there if you want to watch the live stream and see our shiny faces as we go through and talk about the news of the day. Speaking of the news, Michael, I think you're going to kick it off with the first article today.
I am, but let me do a little follow up to what you just said, actually, which is not normally something that deserves follow up. But last time, a couple times ago, I talked about Hermes.
Yeah.
So what a cool little thing! I've been getting more and more done with it, and one of the things I did over the weekend was I've set up an automation such that Hermes can use the website to manage the YouTube channel. And then I set up a nightly job. So every night, as much credits as I can get for API interactions from YouTube, it will automatically go back and update the back catalog like 10 or 20 shows at a time. And so it's on
Oh,
this
nice.
cool thing. So the live back catalog YouTube stuff is getting better and better because it happens as I sleep, like it should.
I love that, getting the richer show notes, etc., put onto there. I like the fact that we can use this to make the world a better place.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just everybody gets links and stuff in their in the videos if they watch it.
Cool.
And how do you get it? Well, is it a JSON API or something else? We don't know. So I want to talk about Django or JSON. Is it OR JSON or JSON? It's probably OR
Probably
JSON.
OR is my guess.
Let's go with OR. I agree because or JSON is weird.
Or Jason.
Or
Or Jason.
or Jason? I don't know. Yeah, so I want to talk about this project from Adam Johnson. So we have a couple of Django topics. This one is a Django topic, but it also goes more broadly. So there's kind of a multi-level thing going on here. Not the marketing badness, but just multiple uses. So this is a project that Adam created so that you can change Django's response model. So apparently the way Django uses JSON or generates JSON responses happens in a bunch of different ways. So it says there's a library called ORJSON. And somewhere it says, yeah, here we go. It says, compared to Python's built-in JSON, it boasts 10x faster serialization and 2 times faster deserialization. And I believe it is a little bit more forgiving of date times and stuff. It has like default conversions, whereas if you've ever tried to serialize certain things. It's like, nope.
Sounds like a win.
Exception I know it does. It couldn't possibly figure out a way to represent time. This is a rare concept we don't normally encounter. So this handles some of those things as well. So there are a couple reasons that you might play with it, but it is a little bit different. So be a bit careful. So, all right. So the idea is that there's a bunch of different places, like such a great library, but adopting it isn't easy when your framework uses JSON in multiple different parts, right? Different places. So Adam introduces Django OR JSON, which provides a bunch of replacements, and you just plug it in, right? So import JSON response, and you can return that directly, which is cool. There's test capabilities. You can load it up in a template, and so on. Also, after seeing the initial, after seeing the initial proposal, Django for Django OR JSON, Paulo, who was recently on Talk Python to talk about maintainer burden and AI, coming back to that at the end as well, or later, decided to push for the addition of OR JSON support in Django itself under a new feature called pluggable JSON serialization backend, which I think is pretty cool.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's nice, right? Like, why not make that an option?
Yeah, totally.
It's like saying, that Pydantic thing, probably a flash in the pan. We don't need to really worry about that. So I actually, let me pull up my notes. We actually
did you get to try it out? You've got a lot of data.
Yes. And so I'm like, well, let me just try this. And one of the things that's really cool is with Claude Code and other things, you can say, here is a proposal for how to do this for JSON. How would I do this for Flask and Court, where I'm running my apps? And can you tell me the areas where it might be a benefit or not so much a benefit? Not only did I get a little summary for how that might go, it's like, and I set up some test performance runs, and it turns out that you get 4 times performance boost, not 10 times performance boost. And
that's not bad.
No, it's not too bad, but I put that the reason, like a little bit of that analysis into the show notes. And it turns out that if you have large JSON documents with a few fields, then it doesn't give you a big boost. If you have a very fine-grained JSON document with lots of small fields, apparently that's where this performance starts to pay off. And I happen to have like big chunky JSON, I guess is what I got. I don't know. It's got things like 100K of transcripts in a response, not... And it's structured as a giant piece of text. It's not necessarily like subtitle, text second, and so on. So that's interesting. And it said, look, it can help your MCP server, but the traffic on the MCP server is not that high. You swap it out, you would probably save 0.119 milliseconds a request. And for a response that takes 1.1 milliseconds, do you really want to mess with it? I decided no, which I thought was kind of interesting in the first place. Like, you try it out, you're like, oh, yeah, cool idea, just not for my use case. Most of my stuff is RSS, it's HTML, it's like not that much JSON. So, but I do think for the right use case, it would be really powerful.
I mean, are there any compatibility caveats that people need to be aware of here?
There are some minor ones about like how it handles certain things that either can't be serialized, or if you don't specify how to serialize them, like for example, date times and stuff like that.
Which everyone loves dealing with date times. That's our favorite.
Yeah. Oh, can we put some time zones in there, please?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, over to you.
Yeah, very cool. Well, mine's also performance related, and I think it'll dovetail nicely into what you just mentioned here. Let's throw mine up on the screen. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. There we go. So speaking of performance and JSON and evaluations, I think one of the things that has been nice about using these AI agents, like you just mentioned, is you can put it on a mission to go try some hypotheses and some theories and etc. This is a article from Peter Mengson, who revisits a one from 2017. So this is actually the original performance article he did around fastest Redis configurations for Django. So a lot of folks just use the default out of the box configuration for Redis, kind of a standard thing these days to use for any kind of caching that you might use inside of your application. But it has tunable capabilities, and so you can adjust the format of the serializer. So whether it uses like JSON, UJSON, message pack, or pickle, you can also adjust the compressors it may use. So whether it's using zlib, LZMA, or Z standard is a new one that's coming up that didn't exist when he did this 2017. So he just actually, this is kind of all pre-AI as well. He did it the old school hard way, which is specify a bunch of different configuration combinations, run through a framework and try and test and see what the performance boost may be based on the kind of data he threw at it. So if you look down here, actually it's kind of fun, very ASCII art result graphs here.
I'm here for the ASCII art. I'm here
yeah,
for it. I
no.
love it.
So JSON's the slowest. Like on here are the shorter or better, so best averages, like for averages, medians, and size of data stored. You can see here JSON not so great. Actually, I wonder if he, in his updated version, he did not use ORJSON. I wonder how that would affect this. But basically, message pack as a message format is going to be one of the fastest ones he found for this specific application. And then if we look over here at
I would bet that message pack is faster than ORJSON.
Probably
so I bet
still.
that sets
Yeah,
a lower
yeah.
bound, you know?
Yeah, so updating here to look at three specific compressors: zlib, LZMA, and Z standard. The LZMA is still slow. While it compresses well, it's slower from a performance standpoint. The default actually not doing too bad here, except for size of data stored, which if you're saving larger sized items, there was a definite performance difference, which actually I think leads to why coding agents like Claude Code and Pi and these orchestrators allow you to do this kind of experimentation with very low risk and overhead, because ultimately the end difference matters on the kind of data. Like you just mentioned, the kind of data you're storing in these various serializers are going to determine a lot of the performance characteristics. So I hate saying it depends, but your mileage will vary based on what you're throwing into Redis and how you're accessing it. So it's always nice to be able to set up some kind of performance harness or benchmark where you can actually test these yourself and see how you get the most mileage out of these tools. And based on what I saw here, it seems like there's quite a bit of room for improvement for eking out more performance. So as we typically do, I like starting off with the defaults first and only optimize when I see a problem. But these are great ways to take a look at the different message format serializers for Django Redis, and then the various compression formats that are out there for it. So a nice methodology, a nice little write-up showing some of the results, and showing that it's actually not too hard for you to go implement this yourself. So a great way to get squeeze some more performance out of Django with your Redis, which is already fast.
I love it.
But here you can make
I love
faster.
it.
Yeah,
it's super fast. I 100% endorse your let's try it with the built-in stuff and then see, because like in my example, I could have taken on one more dependency and thing I have to update, but it's like, do you really need a 1/10 of a millisecond? No, it makes zero difference to me, honestly.
Yeah, we'll talk about simplicity in my next one I bring up after yours here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of real-time follow-up, sort of. I just chose to throw this out there, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Just a quick shout-out to Valky. When I hear stuff on Reddit, I'm like, don't forget the Valky. You're familiar with this, yes?
Oh, yeah. We've when there was a whole hoodoo around the licensing with Redis, we switched over to Valky for many of our projects. It's been great.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so basically Valky is like the more open source fork of Redis, and it's like API compatible, if my understanding.
Right.
But it's 26,000 stars. It's like a half a Flask, something like that level of popularity.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky because then the Redis folks went back on the whole Bizzle license back into open, right?
Yeah, exactly. It gets a little funky, but let's talk about something that not even close to as controversial as that licensing stuff. Let's talk about Linus Torvalds puts his foot down against anti-AI kernel maintainers. There's a lot of double negatives here. So Linus
Right.
says,
I had a hard time parsing that one.
I know. Okay, so Linus says, I'm not having it that there are people saying we're unwilling to use AI in any way against the Linux kernel. And it's pretty interesting. I'm going to link to the actual original thing here. I got some quotes that I pulled out. So this all has to do with this thing called Shashenko. And what Shashenko is, I don't like work on the Linux kernel, so it's not
Same.
a thing I'm super familiar with, just to be clear. But Shashenko is an AI PR review tool. I guess it's built into GitHub or something like that for automation, like GitHub Actions or the equivalent thereof. And it will review inbound PRs for bugs, for correctness, performance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there are some people that are like, no, heck no, I want nothing to do with this thing. So it's not necessarily just cutting AI completely loose and saying, hey, here's the spec of the kernel,
Right.
make it better. See you next week. It's way more subtle and less
Yeah, it's a human
intense.
augmentation. It's making us
Yes,
better at what we do.
exactly. So I'll just pull out a couple of pieces here. I think this is a little noteworthy. My understanding is he was fairly against this kind of stuff, and then kind of played with it more. It's like, what? Actually, I'm not against it anymore. And let me just put this out there. Like, he acknowledges it. I acknowledge it. I'm sure a lot of people will, that there are downsides to AI in lots of ways, but there are also upsides, right? And so he says Linux is not one of those anti-AI projects. Think Zig or something like that, right? And if somebody has issues with that, they can do the open source thing and fork it, or just walk away. It's like,
Okay.
I mean, what do you expect from him, right?
That's true.
What do you expect? AI is a tool, just like other tools we use, and it's clearly a useful one. And it may not have been that clearly even just a year ago, but that's no longer the question. I think that's an important thing, right? Like, if people have formed opinions, especially people who have formed the opinions, like, I don't want to touch this is junk. It's like, why would you come back to a thing that's junk? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And
Why would you go build a house with hand tools when you've got power tools available?
yes, exactly. Well, because nail guns are dangerous. No,
And we've had them since the 40s.
and I do want to point out that there's this really good. There's this good. I've mentioned this guy before on the show. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with this Maximilian Schwarzmuller? This German guy. He's really good talking about like sort of trends in software development. And one of the things he says here is he in response to talking about this said it is time to wake up for some. So he put it more bluntly, saying, look, if in a couple years, if you're doing professional software development, you're going to have to be using these tools.
Yeah.
And you need to get good at them, regardless of how you feel about them. You know what I mean? It's fine for hobby stuff not to do it. That's like a 12-minute, that's a summary of a 12-minute video, but it's really well done. So I recommend people check it out. And he's just an interesting guy. Okay, back to what Linus is saying. Yes, it can be somewhat painful tool for maintainer workloads and so on. And also because it just keeps finding embarrassing bugs, which is annoying, but amazing. I think that this embarrassing bugs bit is actually transient. We've got 10, 20, however long the projects have been around for, years of tech debt.
Tons.
And we send this tool on. It's like running a linter. Like, do you guys have a linter? No. Oh, you should try black or rough or something. And then it's like, there's 2,000 errors. We can't fix 2,000 errors. Like, we just don't run it anymore. You know what I mean? But right. Projects that start adopting linters don't always have 2,000 warnings or issues, right? All right, carrying on. But the solution is not to
put
put
like nothing but win here. Like you want a linter, I wouldn't go without it right now. Period.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of painful to deal with some of the fixes, but you You get through them, and then it's pretty straightforward, especially with dash dash fix and a lot of the modern ones. Okay, so the solution here, says Linus, is not to put your head in the sand and sing la la la. I can't hear you at the top of your voice. It's to make sure the LLM tools help maintainers instead of causing them pain. We're not and here's the essence of this whole thing. We're not forcing anyone to use it, but I will very loudly ignore people who try to argue against other people using it. No, AI is not perfect.
You're right.
but blankety blank, anyone who points to the problems that AI had better be looking in the mirror and pointing themselves at the same time, because people make mistakes too. All right.
Pretty certain I did not write this email post.
Yeah.
This feels very human.
This is very much on brand. So I thought I put out there, I feel like it's a little bit seminal in terms of this. Ars Technica has a write-up as well, and it's gathered almost 200 comments. So that's worth checking out.
Yeah. I'm curious why the folks who are in the Never AI camp are not using it even for completion. Do they never use I mean, I held out on IDEs for a long time because I didn't feel like I needed the autocomplete, but like those days are long gone. Like things have gotten so fast and have helped me like streamline my workflow where it's not standing in my way. And I feel like these tools will get into that point where it is just like wrapping a amazing exoskeleton around your capabilities and going for it and doing more and better.
Yeah. I don't remember the numbers. I don't believe they're in here, but they might be in a fault. I mean, there's a conversation to be had. You can see if you look at the thread. But I believe it's something like this Shashenko thing is like 15% false positives, but 85% like, these are actual bugs that you didn't have to find. I just told you they're bugs here.
Yeah. And these people have all written helper scripts to do these kinds of things. They can't be against this one.
Yeah.
I mean, they can, but it doesn't make any sense.
I feel like if you've got a tool that by the time you get to the PR, it has an 85% accuracy rate of finding and dealing with any of the issues, like, that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Plus, you're still expected to operate as a human in this case, like bringing the creativity, bringing the original thought, just letting it take care of all the mundane, boring stuff, like making sure you crossed your T's and dotted your I's in the code. Seems like all win. All win to me.
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of win, wouldn't it be awesome if HTML did better stuff? Like they didn't stop building it when JavaScript was invented in the 90s or whatever it was.
So we're our third Django related news item for the day is that the Django Steering Council is backing the Triptych project. So if you're not familiar with the Triptych project, it is a 3 proposals for the HTML standard to make things a little more native and expressive. So adding in, for example, put, patch, and delete methods to forms. We've all abused post far too long and added in things like /delete to the end of our API URLs to accomplish things that really should just be using a specific vocabulary or verb from HTTP language, which is delete. So this gives us the ability to put those 3 extra actions. The fact that button actions should be a thing. So buttons that just can fire HTTP requests without wrapping them in a form. How many times have you had a singleton button with form on top, form on the bottom? Or worse, like for example, if you're not using a button, but dressing up a link to look like a button, for example, like a logout, the logout button could potentially get triggered by some of the prefetch operations that are happening by some of the browsers or unfurling, etc. So you may get unexpectedly log out or unexpectedly delete something. Be careful when you make a button that says delete that is actually a link. Those buttons should be buttons.
There was actually, back in internet lore, there was a really interesting thing. I think at the early days of Wikipedia, that one of the delete buttons was actually just an ahref that went to a delete operator, but did a get and got indexed and deleted a bunch of Wikipedia. So I think it was Wikipedia.
Yep. So the idea is, let's re-simplify, make things more semantically operational in the way that we should expect them to work. The last proposal is actually around partial page replacements. So if you are taking the ideas from basically HTMX, Unpoly, and Turbo and putting them into the HTML standard itself. So this means if the standard gets adopted and the browser start putting this into their HTML parser and engine that's powering your web browser, less JavaScript and libraries can actually be shipped to get the same level of interactivity on the pages that we're doing right now today with things like HTMX. I really like the HTMX library. I feel like it gives people a clean, clear way to do things in Django really fast and have like a single page web app like front end without having to rebuild all of your Django models in React on the front end. Like with a lot of the React patterns, you're building the same models twice, the same routers twice, the same application basically has to be built and maintained in two separate frameworks. Where if you just had these capabilities built right into HTMX or the browser, I mean, with this Triptych project proposals for the HTML spec. Oh, think about how clean and this is simple that the development could be, especially for testing out and running quick little one-off projects. They could be so much less dependencies, hopefully less maintenance going on in there. So I think that's really nice. The piece that's relevant for Django, Django is here to help shepherd in the better web and new technologies for it. So that's why they're backing the Triptych project specifically. But also for example, the Django 6 introduced template partials, which are inspired by these patterns. So Django's kind of already ready to have this work. So if you're using HTMX, you get some benefit that Django helps you generate these partials right out of the box, which is another one of the nice things about Django. It's kind of that batteries included, all the things just work. If you want to help, there's links here to the Triptych project, which if you are familiar with the web hypertext community, the WhatWG, I don't know how you pronounce that specifically, but this is basically taken over from the W3C for the HTML standards. And so they have submitted a proposal to this working group, which is basically the living HTML standard, which is where browser companies now build from and based off of. That's what they've put forth. This has been put forth by Carson Gross and Alex Petros. So if you may recognize some of those names, one of them is the creator of HTMX itself. And if we go into the Triptych project, you can see there's the 3 proposals here, plus a blog post I linked to, and some of the examples of why this is actually important, and some of the history around it. If you want to get involved, I think that's actually the more relevant call to action here, is they're looking for folks to send non-binding letters of support on company letterhead that they would be willing to support and sponsor these proposals and help weigh in on that issue. So there's a GitHub issue. That whole living HTML spec is actually maintained as a GitHub repository. Anyone can join. It's not an exclusive club of enterprises and corporations anymore driving that living HTML spec. It's driven by the community itself. So if you get excited by this, go get involved, go check it out. I look forward to this being the future of browsers because we can now, especially for simple things, oh boy, would this be just nice to have this built in.
Yeah. It kind of fills the role that jQuery used to, and we got past it because it's like, oh no, we need to build this huge front end stuff. And sometimes you just need, when I click that thing over there to change, but the rest of the page to stay.
I mean, I wanted this for like 2 decades. Like the fact that the button couldn't just fire an action, like having that wiring, it just makes sense. And I think this makes sense for getting things cleaned up and having less workarounds means that agentic coding tools can actually operate better because they'll have a better understanding of the semantics of this. They appreciate semantics where things are wired up and work as you expect them to.
Yeah, and if you like things like HTMX and Datastar and those kinds of frameworks, this just brings it natively to the browsers closer. There's still layers to add on top of it, but less.
I'm excited to see the Django community getting behind this. It's good. There's still innovation happening on a 25-year-old project.
Incredible, right?
Yeah, it is. What do you got for extras today, Michael?
I have a couple of things here. 2 things, and just a little bit of a follow-up to what I know your extra is going to be. But I'm going to wait. It's going to be a multi-staged extra, let's say.
All right.
So I am a fan of the Granian web framework, powers Python Bytes.fm, and many, many other things. It's a Rust-based HTTP server for Python, like think G Unicorn, UVicorn, that type of thing. And it's been around for quite a while. It's quite active. It's getting a lot of updates on it. More importantly, let's see. Where will one? This is not. See, I need to work on my Rust. Go to the cargo log. More importantly, it wraps this thing called Hyper. And if you look at Hyper, that's like, it's a web server out of the Rust world that has like 130,000 stars. So basically, this is like a WSGI and ASCII server that just kind of provides Hyper to Python applications, right? Cool, cool. So what am I talking about? I've had Giovanni on the show and stuff before, but there's a pretty big update to it, even though it's just a 2.7.9. But
Sounds
fixed a
innocuous.
bug. It sounds like whatever. But I fixed a bug in the blocking thread pool schedule, causing starvation under scaling with WSGI and long running requests. Like, so if you're using this, just bump it up. That's easy.
Easy to do.
Easy to do. It
should
sounds like it would make a big difference.
You should definitely do that. The
Yes.
next one, I'm going to reshare my screen here.
Okay.
Do a live demo if I can find the stinking window. There we go. So I really enjoy Doom. Doom was originally coded up and created on the Next Step OS and the Next machines. And so I actually have two Next machines on my desk that have Doom installed on them. I have Doom installed on my iPad, but now I can have Doom installed in the terminal. And instead of, usually people are saying, does it run Doom? Like that's the joke that people say, can that piece of hardware run Doom? This is a little different. This is your Doom running in SQLite. So Doom QL, so you can see here, select star from hell. So if you're a fan of the game, that joke should land. But basically the frame buffer is a SQL query. So if we actually come in over here and I'll run the demo, make run. This is Doom running in my frame buffer, but the frame buffer is running in SQLite. So it uses the same standard WSAD key combos. You can go and grab like power-ups. There are monsters in here someplace.
This
tricky.
is incredible.
Yeah, it's tricky to. It's a little trick. Oh, see, I'm getting like killed by. Oh, there's a monster right there. It is killing me as we go. This is running SQLite. You can actually tail the SQL queries and watch all the queries that are happening under the covers if you had another window open and ran the make inspect command. So definitely check that out. It is hilarious to see that we have got Doom running in SQLite. So not just on fancy hardware, on crazy databases now. We can run Doom.
How incredible. That is super, super neat.
So that's what I had.
And
go check it out.
I don't know how I feel about it, but yeah, Doom. I used to play a lot of Doom when I was much younger.
Same.
Younger. I also have another real-time follow-up. How can you possibly play Doom? One of my earliest jobs was working this place called eye tracking, EYE tracking, at eyetracking.com in San Diego. And we did all this crazy type of research by like looking at what people would see and how their eyes would react as they were solving problems and so on. So we had these weird collaborations. And one of the collaborations was this guy, I don't remember, it was like a university or something, who did stuff with EEG, I think it was, not EKG, the brain bit, not the heart bit, with the wires. And so somehow wanted to kind of understand the eye tracking side and the EEG side. What does this have to do with Doom? Well, he would play it by thinking with an EEG, no hands. Cool. And he would just think, and it would turn left, and they would think something else, and it would shoot a gun. But what was really weird was he wouldn't think turn left, and it would turn left. He'd have to activate different parts of his brain. So he's like, bacon, bacon, bacon. It would start shooting. You know what I mean? Like, because it couldn't just be the same part with motor skills. It'd have to be like a different part, like a Xbox controller of the brain. Anyway, I thought people might find that amusing. That's really, really weird.
Doom's got quite a bit of history with the computer world, the computer science world too.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's talk about jokes. I'm sure there's a bug in Doom. So I named this joke "Solving All the Bugs." Have you seen this?
No, I've not.
Have you looked at? Okay, good.
I didn't peek.
Good. So I want you to put yourself in the state of I don't know, some apocalyptical future, whenever the Matrix was set with Neo and Morpheus and all
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
how in this kind of world, how would you solve the bugs? Well, it says no production. I can't do it. Okay, no production incident ever exists without Jira ticket. So what if Jira tickets are the issues all along? There is no Jira. There is no spoon. Everything is perfect.
All right.
Oh boy.
I'm ready to take the red pill.
Yeah, let's take it.
Thanks,
There is
Michael.
no spoon. Yeah, you
That-
bet. You bet.
That's amazing. Especially your Keanu Reeves impression. Very, very
I
spot
tried.
on.
I
Very
tried.
spot
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
Very, very spot. Well, thank you for joining us this week for Python Bytes. All the news, all the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all next week. We'll see you later.